A young girl named Mirabel appears, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. On February 15, 2026, a video began to circulate on TikTok that would garner over 10 million views in a matter of days. But today, we aren't just telling a story of a crime. We are investigating the possibility of a calculated deception that has polarized an entire nation. The subject? Mirabel, an orphan struggling with insomnia, claimed that a stranger, a man she had previously rejected, forced his way into her apartment under the cover of night. She described a brutal struggle, a blow to the head against her refrigerator that knocked her into a cold unconsciousness, and a subsequent assault that left her broken. But almost as soon as the tears began to flow in the comment sections, a darker narrative began to emerge. Critics, skeptics, and digital detectives began to point at what they called staged elements, suggesting that Mirabel's story was not a cry for justice, but a masterfully crafted false allegation designed for the ultimate digital currency: clout and sympathy. Mirabel's backstory is one of profound isolation. Having recently buried her mother, she lived alone, a fact she emphasized to highlight her vulnerability. She claimed that after the intruder fled, he didn't just disappear into the Lagos night. Instead, he supposedly sent her a detailed confession via a TikTok burner account. This is where the first major crack in the wall appeared. In the world of criminal profiling, predators do not leave digital footprints of their own volition. They do not apologize, they do not explain. Yet, Mirabel presented this message as a smoking gun. To many, this felt less like a real-life horror and more like a scripted plot point from a Nollywood drama. The public was torn. Was she a traumatized girl trying to make sense of a nightmare, or a strategist using her status as an orphan to shield herself from scrutiny? The controversy began to boil as the physical evidence she provided, a video from a hospital bed, raised more questions than it answered. The hospital in her video was described by viewers as looking like a dilapidated, abandoned family compound from the 1990s rather than a medical facility. There were no nurses, no doctors, and no professional equipment, just Mirabel, a drip, and a story that was becoming increasingly difficult for the public to swallow. Despite claims of ingesting Sniper, a deadly insecticide, she was reportedly out of the facility in less than 24 hours. This medical miracle only fueled the fires of doubt. Was this a genuine medical emergency, or was the hospital merely a set for a viral performance? As celebrities began to reach out and NGOs scrambled to find her, the silence from Mirabel's camp was deafening. The world waited for a medical report that never came, and a story that began as a tragedy was quickly morphing into one of the most debated potential hoaxes of the decade. If you want to find the truth in the digital age, you don't look at the face, you look at the font. As the alleged confession from the rapist began to circulate, the internet did something remarkable. They performed a syntax analysis. Mirabel has a very specific, almost unique habit of spelling the word so with two O's, Sue. It is her digital signature, present in her captions for months. When sleuths analyzed the alleged rapist's confession, they found the exact same niche misspelling. On 3 separate occasions, the stranger, a man she claimed she didn't know, spelled so as Sue. The statistical probability of a random attacker sharing the same niche misspelling as her victim is astronomical. This was the moment the false allegation narrative gained massive traction. It suggested that the message was coming from inside the house, that Mirabel was essentially chatting with herself to build a case that didn't exist. The controversy intensified when VeryDarkMan offered to fly her to Abuja for a proper forensic exam. If she were telling the truth, this was the ultimate lifeline. If she were lying, it was a trap. Her hesitation to accept the offer was seen by many as a silent admission of guilt. When she finally spoke to VDM, she couldn't produce a doctor's report for the assault, claiming instead that her doctors told her to sit on hot water to heal razor blade wounds. To a public increasingly skeptical of skit makers and clout chasers, this sounded like the weak script of someone who hadn't done their research. The Sioux spelling, the abandoned-looking hospital, and the lack of medical documentation created a mountain of doubt that Mirabel was struggling to climb. Before we dive into the psychological motives behind such a bold claim, hit that subscribe button right now. Here at Tremendous Crime in History, we believe that accountability is the only way to protect real victims. By subscribing, you support a channel that refuses to be played by viral trends. We dig for the facts, even when they are uncomfortable. Subscribe now and join the hunt for the truth in a world full of filters. Why would someone lie about such a traumatic event? This is the question that haunts the Mirabel case. Critics point to the fact that in the middle of her viral updates, her bank account details were being shared by friends for support. In a struggling economy, a viral tragedy can be a financial windfall. But there is another, more complex possibility. Psychologists suggest that some individuals who have suffered real trauma in the past create new scenarios to finally receive the validation and care they never got. If Mirabel is indeed fabricating this current event, it may be a fractured cry for help from a soul that has been broken long before February 2026. However, the tragedy of a false allegation is that it doesn't just affect the person making it, it poisons the well for every real victim who will come forward in the future. The standoff with the NGOs was the final straw for many. While organizations were begging to help her, Mirabel remained active on TikTok, posting updates but avoiding the people who could provide professional verification. This gatekeeping of her own trauma made many believe that she was afraid of an actual investigation. When you are a victim, you want the truth to be found. When you are a narrator, you want to keep control of the story. The controversy has reached a point where even her supporters are asking for a marker, a medical proof of the razor blade injuries she described. Without it, the story of Mirabel will go down not as a triumph of justice, but as a cautionary tale of how easily the internet can be manipulated by a single determined voice. Do you think it is fair to scrutinize a victim's spelling and hospital choice, or are people being too harsh on a girl who might just be traumatized? Type "Evidence matters" or "Believe her" in the comments below. The legacy of the Mirabel case is a heavy one. If this is proven to be a false allegation, the damage to the Believe Women movement in Nigeria will be catastrophic. Every time a story is staged for clout, a real victim somewhere else loses their voice. They become afraid that their cracks in the wall will be picked apart by a cynical public. This is why holding people like Mirabel accountable to the facts is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of protection for the truth. We must demand medical reports, we must check the Sioux spellings, and we must look at the hospitals. Because if we don't, the word justice loses all meaning, and the internet becomes nothing more than a theater for the highest bidder. But take-home lesson: truth does not fear investigation. If Mirabel is telling the truth, a forensic exam in Abuja will be her vindication. If she is lying, her silence will be her confession. As viewers, we must pause before we donate and think before we trend. In the age of viral scripts, the most important tool you have is your skepticism. Let us hope for the truth for the sake of Mirabel and for the sake of every real victim waiting in the shadows for their story to be heard and believed. The saga of Mirabel serves as a haunting reminder that in 2026, the line between a real-life horror and a digital performance is thinner than ever. We await the final results of the investigation and hope that justice, in whatever form it takes, is served. If you found this deep dive into the controversy of the Mirabel case insightful, make sure to subscribe to Tremendous Crime in History. We don't just tell you what happened, we tell you why it matters. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the crimes and controversies that define our world. Stay vigilant, and we'll see you in the next investigation.